This is True Crime Out Loud.
I'm your host, B.
And I'm your host, Jen.
And this week's case takes place in Warwick, Rhode Island. Now, as some of you may know, Rhode Island is located in the New England area of the east coast of the United States. It is the smallest U.S. state by land area with a little over 1,200 square miles, with a population of just over 1 million people. Now, Rhode Island is known as the ocean state because 14% of it is water, and it has 384 miles of shoreline along the Narragansett Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. We'll talk about the Narragansett Bay a little bit later. It's going to become important. Now, the city itself is Warwick, and it is the second largest city in Rhode Island, and it does sit on Narragansett Bay. And it has a population of about 85,000, and it's your typical coastal city. It's about 12 miles south of Providence, Rhode Island, which is the largest city in Rhode Island population-wise. It is 63 miles from Boston, Massachusetts. And like I said, it sits on Narragansett Bay, and Narragansett Bay, a little bit about it, it's 147 square miles of bay and estuary, and it's located on the north side of the Rhode Island Sound. There are over 40 islands in the bay, and this is a very large bay with beautiful water and that kind of thing. And it's going to become kind of the focal point for our case this week.
So this case is going to kind of start out where it doesn't seem like there's a lots of twists and turns, but stick with me because we're going to get into some twists and turns, and you're going to have to pay attention to all of it to understand what's going on in the end. So on August 30th, 1990, we have some people that come into contact with each other. First of all, we have Jason Bass, and he's 20 years old, and he was driving his car with his cousin Joshua Post, who's known as Josh, riding with him. Now, they drove and they picked up a friend, and they were headed home just before 9 p.m. on August 30th, which was a Thursday. So Jason and Josh and this friend were just enjoying a summer night, and they were going to go hang out. Well, we also have Adam and his wife, Elena Emery, who were with another couple, and they were just a group of friends out grabbing some dinner at a seafood stand in Warwick. And again, just enjoying a nice night out. Well, Adam and Elena saw a vehicle sideswipe their car, and then the suspect took off and turned a corner. So Adam and Elena jump in their car, and they take off after this suspect vehicle. So Elena pointed to a Ford LTD and said, "That's the car, let's chase them down." So that's what they did. Adam's trying to get this suspect vehicle that has just sideswiped his car to pull over, and it's the Ford LTD driven by Jason. Well, Jason doesn't want to pull over, and Adam manages somehow to cut Jason off and force him to stop. Not a good situation to be in. If somebody sideswipes your car, don't go chase them down, first of all. Second of all, if somebody's trying to pull you over, it's a good thing not to pull over. So once Adam manages to cut Jason off, Adam approaches the car on the driver's side, and he's yelling at Jason, and he's trying to grab at the car, but Jason isn't going to hang around to play with him, and he puts it in reverse and tries to get away. Well, Adam had on him a military-style knife, and he grabbed it and stabbed Jason before he could leave. Well, Josh, Jason's cousin who's in the car, he jumps out of the car and runs to a nearby home to get help because his cousin's just been stabbed. Well, in the nearby area lived a Rhode Island state trooper, and he heard the sound of what appeared to be a car crash, so he goes to assist to make sure that everybody's okay, there's no injuries, but he rolls up on the scene of this. The state trooper said when he arrived, he saw this Ford LTD that belonged to Jason on the lawn of a home, and Jason was on the ground with a stab wound. He said Adam was nearby drinking a glass of water, and he said to the trooper, "I did it." Well, the call came in to Warwick Police Department because that's going to be their jurisdiction, not the state trooper. And the call came into them as an accident. So Sergeant Fred Pierce arrived on the scene of what he thought was an accident. When Sergeant Pierce arrived, he saw Adam, and he knew Adam because they were in the National Guard together. And he said Adam was sitting on the steps of a nearby home, and he had blood on his clothing. Of course, Sergeant Pierce has no idea at this time what's going on. He said the scene was just chaotic and it was hectic, which is what you would expect. Well, Jason had been stabbed in the heart with this military-style knife, and he died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital.
So now we have a road rage incident that has turned into one person dead from a stab wound to the heart. This is just another illustration of why it is a horrible idea to get involved in these road rage type incidents. It is much, much safer for everyone involved if we just let the police handle that. So, as I said, now we've got Jason with the stab wound to his heart and dead in the back of an ambulance over a sideswiped car. Now the police are going to take this hectic and chaotic scene and try to piece together what's happened. And they find paint transfer from the suspect vehicle on Adam's car. But the paint was not from Jason's car, and they later confirmed that with chemical analysis. Adam had chased down the wrong car. And now, by virtue of the fact that he's chased down the wrong car, now he's stabbed a guy who wasn't even involved in the original side-swiping thing. Josh, if you'll remember, that was the cousin that was in the car with Jason, said Adam got out of his car, approached the driver's side and was yelling and screaming. He had never seen anyone that mad. That was his statement to police. He had never seen anyone that mad. Jason, Josh, and the friend who was also in the car had no clue what was going on, why Adam was so enraged and why he was coming at them, but they were scared and they wanted to get out of there. Very natural response to being approached by somebody who was obviously as angry as Adam seemed to be. And Adam stabbed Jason, but as we said, Jason was the wrong guy. He's not involved in the sideswiping thing, and even if he was, I mean, that's obviously not justification to stab him. So Adam is immediately arrested at the scene for the homicide of Jason. All right, so we get to trial for this crime, and Adam was offered a plea of manslaughter and didn't take it. And so he went on trial for second-degree murder. And this part is kind of intriguing to me. This part of the case is kind of intriguing to me. He should have taken the plea, in my opinion, because at this point, he has to know. He's got an attorney and everything else. He has to know not only did he stab somebody in a situation that didn't call for it, but he has stabbed the wrong guy, someone not even involved. He should have taken the plea.
It sounds almost a little arrogant on Adam's part that he's not taking a plea, or it just might have been hopeful that if I go to trial, maybe I'll be found not guilty.
Well, sure. He never denied stabbing Jason. I mean, he said that he did it. He mistook the car. He admitted that. He admitted to mistaking Jason's vehicle for the one that sideswiped his. But once Jason put the car in reverse, Adam thought he was being attacked and pulled his knife in self-defense and stabbed Jason in self-defense. That was what he presented at trial for his defense. So he sees Jason backing up. He gets scared thinking that Jason's going to run over him, and he pulls his knife out and goes at Jason. That's pretty flimsy, in my opinion. But I guess you got to have some defense, right?
Well, and we don't know because self-defense is in the mind of that person. And if he thought he was being attacked and he has the legal right to defend himself, I mean, that's what he's going in. And that's probably why he didn't take the plea, because he felt confident in how he felt about that defense.
Yeah. Well, I would hope that the attorney would point out to him the other circumstances that don't point towards his defense, like the fact that he has now engaged the wrong person. All right. So he's put himself in that position, which is unusual in successful self-defense claims.
But you have to look at the time, Adam didn't know it was the wrong person. Even though it was, and we know it was, Adam didn't know that it was the wrong person. And he's thinking this is the person that sideswiped him. And now they're trying to run over me in order to get away. So that's where his self-defense claim comes from. Not saying it's justified. I'm just saying that's where he is coming from.
You're defending him too hard, counselor. He's run somebody off the road and now stabbed them in the chest. And all while yelling, according to Josh, I'm going to kick your butt and I'm going to kill you. Doesn't sound like somebody who's scared and acting in self-defense. But he was found guilty of second-degree murder on November 10th, 1993. Adam showed no remorse during his trial, also uncharacteristic for self-defense, and kept claiming that he did what he had to do for self-defense. Typically, people who are forced to take someone else's life, even in self-defense, hate that they had to do it. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah. Second-degree murder in Rhode Island, there must be strong evidence of the following legal elements: that the defendant willfully caused the death of another person, and that the defendant acted with malice. And I think both of these elements were met very easily in this case. So the penalty for that is 10 years with a maximum penalty of life with possibility of parole after 15. He was released on bond until his sentencing hearing, which was set for December of 1993. So about a month after his guilty verdict. And I want to talk about that for a second because I find that practice very unusual as well. This person has now been convicted of murder. He is convicted. He's been convicted by, you would assume, a jury. I'm not sure whether he had a jury trial or a bench trial, but he's been convicted of murder and now he is released to await sentencing. And this was 1993, wasn't real long ago. That just seems highly unusual to me. It seems like it could invite trouble, and in this case it does.
Well, it seemed unusual to me too, but I don't know how Rhode Island works. The unusual part is that it was a murder charge. Had it been like a forgery or a theft or something, I could see that happening. But you're right, it's really unusual for a murder charge to be allowed out on bond until their sentence hearing.
Sure, any kind of crime against a person like that, a violent assault or a sexual assault or a homicide, you wouldn't think that person would be allowed to leave until there's a sentencing hearing. I can see, like you said, with basically any other crime, some type of drug charge or a property crime or a white-collar crime, I can see that. Maybe they're waiting and allowing him to get his affairs in order before he goes to prison for a while. But he has killed someone, and it ends up backfiring.
Yeah. Well, so like B said, on November 10th of 1993 was the day he was found guilty. And this was over 3 years after the murder of Jason Bass. And the day that he's convicted is also Adam's 31st birthday. At around 3 p.m. after court was over, Adam and Elena walk out of the courthouse. And like B said, he's released on bond. And this was basically to get his affairs in order because he knows he's about to have to serve some prison time. Around 3:35 p.m., they were at a local sporting goods store. And then shortly after that, they were seen eating at a Burger King. And the employees said they seemed quite happy, in a good mood and carrying on and talking with one another. Well, at 4:45 p.m., their car was seen on the Claiborne-Pell Bridge.
Now, a little bit about the Claiborne-Pell Bridge, because it's going to play a key role in the second half of this week's case. It was called the Newport Bridge in 1993 at the time of this case, but its name was later changed to the Claiborne-Pell Bridge, and that was because of a U.S. senator who had that same name. Now, its construction is much like the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. It's a suspension bridge. It is, in fact, the longest suspension bridge in New England, and it spans the East Passage of the Narragansett Bay. It connects Newport and Jamestown. So it is a very large suspension bridge across the Narragansett Bay, and Jen has put some pictures of the bridge up on our website so that you can see it. From the water to the roadway is about 215 feet or 66 meters, so it's a long way from the bridge to the water line. And from the bridge to the town of Warwick is about a 40-minute drive.
Like I said, at 4:45, their car was seen on the Claiborne-Pell Bridge. About 5 minutes later, at 4:50, Adam and Elena were seen on the bridge walkway next to their green Toyota Camry. At about 5:15, they got in their car and they drove off away from the bridge. But at 6:53 p.m., the police get a call of a car abandoned on the bridge, and they arrive to find Adam's green Toyota Camry. It was running and the lights were on. They looked in the car, looking to see if anybody was in it, looked to see if anybody was around it. They didn't see anybody, but they do see in the back seat there were clothing items that were neatly folded. Also in the car were Adam's credit cards, and they were cut up, along with his identification and Elena's purse. So let me go back and talk about that shopping trip to the sporting goods store and tell you what they bought there. They bought sweatsuits, athletic socks, and 80 pounds of workout-style strap-on weights. Sounds a little sus, huh?
A little bit.
The cashier at the sporting goods store said that Adam seemed kind of disturbed about the amount of the bill. We'll see why that's important here in just a little bit. So what happened next?
Yeah, where do we go from here? Now we've got this convicted murderer. We've lost track of him. His car is on a bridge, and he's bought a bunch of weights. So this is definitely a strange case. Obviously, the authorities are going to launch a massive search of the bay. It is one of the largest searches in Rhode Island history. They use sonars, maps of the bay floor, and even human detecting dogs, but they found nothing. Adam and Elena's family spent another $15,000 of their own money to search the bay for evidence of the two. Now, the bay itself is very deep. Under the bridge, it's 140 feet deep. And so they're searching that area, and they're searching the bridge itself, the roadway. Warwick PD, if you'll remember, handled the homicide case, but now this has occurred on the bridge, and it's Rhode Island State Police's jurisdiction, the bridges. So they are handling the missing person or suicide case. I guess everyone is initially thinking that it's a suicide. So the police are looking for any investigative leads, anything that might point to this being a pre-planned thing or any planning. They even go so far as to having a hearing impaired person watch the video footage from Adam's trial to see if they can read Adam and Elena's lips, to see if maybe they talked about this plan to jump off the bridge or anything that would point towards why that car is sitting there empty on the bridge. And this person said that they believed Elena had made the comment to Adam, "We're going to do what we originally said. You promised me." So now that's going to lead police to think that maybe this was like a suicide pact. But January 18th, 1994, a warrant's issued for Adam for unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, second-degree murder. So,
and that would be normal with them not finding their bodies in the bay. To go ahead, they have to continue as if he's alive.
Well, sure, and that puts a legal document in place now so that if he turns up in Georgia, they can hold him long enough to get him back to Rhode Island. And initially, the police have two theories, and they're pretty self-explanatory, that they both jumped in the bay to their deaths, like I said, in a suicide pact, or that they both fled to keep Adam from going to prison, and they just staged the scene to look like they jumped.
But there's more to it. So 9 months after the disappearance in 1993, fishermen were working the bay area, and they drug up 2 leg bones in their fishing nets. So they tried to identify these leg bones, and after some DNA testing compared to family members of Adam and Elena, they were positively identified as Elena's leg bones. And then, a few months later, on August 30th of 1994, which I would like to note here is exactly 4 years to the day after the murder of Jason Bass, another fishing net, it's a commercial fishing net, pulls up a human skull from the east passageway of the bay. And this skull was identified as Elena Emery. No remains of Adam have been found. These are both times they are of Elena. So Adam's family in 2004 had him declared legally dead. And there is even a headstone. It's a joint headstone for Adam and Elena in St. Anne's Cemetery in Cranston, Rhode Island. But let's talk about some other theories. After Elena's bones are found, there are some new theories, and some of these are police theories, and some of these are just theories from other people of what could have happened. But I want to discuss all of them because I think they're all very interesting. The first is the original theory. Adam and Elena both jumped and committed suicide together, but Adam's remains have just not been found. Another theory is they both jumped, but Adam was able to survive the jump and swim to land and get away and avoid prosecution.
Now, I got some issues with that theory in particular. Number one, remember what I said. From the road surface to the water surface is approximately 215 feet. So that means that if you jumped off of the bridge, you would fall 215 feet before impacting the water.
And that would be, I know my mom used to tell me when I was young, if you jump from something high enough and hit water, it's the same as jumping onto concrete.
Well, yeah, and you got to figure just on average, okay, so each story of a building is roughly 10 feet, 10 to 12 feet, okay, is how tall a story is. So you got to think 215 feet, that would be like him jumping off of an almost 18 to 20 story building into the water. I mean, that's a long, long way to fall. I mean, it's just highly unlikely that he would survive that. And it's highly unlikely that if he did survive the fall, that he would be in any condition to flee the area. He would be so severely injured that it'd be difficult to get away, for him to get away without being noticed, in my opinion. Now, they obviously consult the Coast Guard, and I'm sure that, unfortunately, as with any bridges, any big famous bridge has its share of suicides. So this is probably not the first time they've dealt with somebody who potentially jumped off of this bridge. And the Coast Guard who works the area said that most people are found, or their remains are found, within a few hours or a few days. So as Jen said, no signs of Adam have been located, but it did take several months for any signs of Elena to turn up. And we do believe that they were possibly weighted down with these vests or workout type weights.
Well, that moves us kind of into another theory. Another theory is that Elena jumped and Adam did not jump, which also moves into another theory that Elena was pushed by Adam and he fled, leaving her to die.
See, and I would just have to see some kind of motive for this. I guess the only potential motive I could see would be if he thought that Elena would not go along with him skipping out on the sentencing hearing, and trying to avoid prison. Otherwise, what other reason would he have to kill her?
Well, if they made a suicide pact and he changed his mind and he wanted to flee and she refused to flee, I guess he could push her so that he could flee by himself.
I guess.
So, but one of the things that people point to about Adam possibly having let Elena jump or having pushed Elena is that the car was there about 5:15. It left and then returned. And, he could have let her jump or pushed her and then returned to leave the car there before he fled to make it look like he had jumped too. Or they could have just been looking at the spot where they were going to jump from and went to take care of some other things before they came back. Also, people point out, it's easier for one person to flee and hide than it is for two people.
And that goes back to what I said, especially if Elena was not on board with him ducking the sentencing hearing.
So the last theory is, and it's probably the most far off and least likely, but I still want to cover it, is that neither of them jumped, but Adam later killed Elena and then dumped her remains in order to make it look like they both had jumped.
Yeah, and to me that sounds kind of like some internet-based speculation.
I think that's exactly what it was, but I still wanted to point it out here.
Right. That's just the least likely. Some other factors that could be considered against any of these theories, and I noticed this right off the bat, it's kind of strange that they parked their car without someone noticing during this time of day on a massive bridge. This is not a small bridge over a lazy river in the middle of some rural county area. This is a 4-lane bridge that is always heavily traveled. So I mean, why? It's weird that they're able to get their car there, which they obviously did.
And they jumped and nobody saw them.
Right.
They could not find a single witness that saw them
standing on the rail or anything like that.
And what's even more strange is that people saw them the first time they were parked there standing outside the car, and then the car left and came back and nobody saw them. And I think people use this to point to maybe he pushed her or she jumped and he left and came back. But again, nobody saw anybody that second time.
Well, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are thinking, as I did as well, that it was kind of odd that he's upset about the cost of these weights and everything. If he is planning on killing himself, does it really matter how much he spends on the weights?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm there with you along the way because they didn't have anybody that they were leaving their money to, obviously. So,
and you got to think they were seen eating together and seemed reasonably happy at Burger King. Now, I like Burger King, but I don't know that that's where I would pick to have my last meal. And I don't know that I'd be particularly happy eating anywhere if I realized that I was eating my last meal.
Well, I say, now this is just the Jen way of thinking, that they were happy because they both had resolved to what they were going to do and knew that there was a way out of him going to prison, and that's why they were happy. But I agree with you. I would not have my last meal at Burger King, but if he was upset about the amount he spent at the sporting goods store, Burger King may have been the only option left.
Who knows? It's some strange circumstances, but it gets kind of even, to me, a little more interesting because so we have this person who's been legally declared dead. But in 2010, Adam is placed on the FBI's most wanted list. So that's interesting to me. We have somebody that the state of Rhode Island has said, we believe this guy's dead. And the FBI says, but maybe not. And we're going to put him on the FBI most wanted list. So, and this went on even into like 2017, the FBI's tweeting Adam's wanted poster. He has been featured on playing cards that are given to inmates in the Rhode Island prisons. So that's an interesting thing too. It's kind of like, have you seen this guy, on the back of playing cards that are handed out.
So those playing cards, I know they're normal in state prisons, and they usually feature like wanted people or unsolved crimes or missing people, just to try to get tips from people inside the jails.
Yeah, the FBI is definitely not giving up on this case. As recently as August 2020, the Boston FBI field office was still following Adam's whereabouts, leads about his whereabouts in this case. Adam would be 58 years old in April of 2021. So if he is alive, he's 58 years old.
They haven't released an age progression photo of him. So all we have is the pictures of him from the latest ones are 1993. Maybe they'll eventually do an age progression so that people can see if he is still alive. Somebody could hopefully identify him.
So the last time Adam was seen, he's a white male, brown hair, blue eyes, 6 foot 1 inches tall, and 175 pounds. Now, another interesting note is that before his disappearance, Adam worked as a purchasing agent for a plastics company, and that kind of gave him some contacts. He could be in Florida, or there's been speculation that he's even in Italy, outside of the country.
What I saw on the FBI's website was on the wanted poster that they have for Adam says Florida or Italy. So, and we have a lot of listeners in Florida, but I mean, they're looking for a guy that's 58 years old now and not 31 if he's still alive. And I mean, we don't know. Like I said, his bones weren't found. Nothing was found of him, but does that mean that he's not there, or?
I personally feel like he jumped and he's dead.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most logical sense, and our law enforcement minds tell us the simplest explanation is usually the right one, but, I mean, with nothing being found, you have nothing to go back on to say that's why it's going on. And with the FBI still following up and still keeping it an active want on this guy, they might have some information that we don't know about.
Sure. And as always, if any of our listeners have any information regarding this case, they can contact the FBI field office in Boston and pass those tips along to them.
We appreciate the reviews we've been getting, especially to our listener that thinks my voice is relaxing. And
that might have been an inside job.
I don't know who did it. I don't know who the listener is, but I appreciate the positive reviews that we're getting, and keep them coming, and keep your case recommendations coming. If you haven't heard yours, because I've had somebody say, hey, I recommended this a while back, or when are you going to do it? I don't necessarily know when we're going to do it because I'm researching constantly. Like I have 10 open cases I'm researching right now. We are going to do all of them that are recommended. So don't think we're not getting to yours. It's just we're only doing one a week, and sometimes we do bonus. And I hope you enjoyed your Easter bonus on the Missy Beavers case. And
as always, we'll see you next week. We would like to hear your thoughts on this and all of our cases. And as always, you can reach us by email at truecrimeoutloud@gmail.com, Facebook and Instagram at True Crime Out Loud. Out Loud is 2 words, not one, and Twitter at TC Out Loud.
Photos, links, and sources for this case can be found on our website at www.truecrimeoutloud.com.